Chapter 18 of The Log of a Cowboy by Andy Adams. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The North Platte. It was now July. We had taken on new supplies at Ogallala, and a week afterwards the herd was snailing along the North Platte on its way to the land of the Blackfeet. It was always hard to get a herd past a supply point. We had the same trouble when we passed Dodge. Our long hours in the saddle, coupled with the monotony of our work, made these supply points of such interest to us that they were like oases in desert lands to devotees on pilgrimage to some consecrated shrine. We could have spent a week in Ogallala and enjoyed our visit every blessed moment of the time. But now, a week later, most of the headaches had disappeared, and we had settled down to our daily work. At Horse Creek, the last stream of water before entering Wyoming, a lad who cut the trail at that point for some cattle companies, after trimming us up, rode along for half a day through their range and told us of an accident which happened about a week before. The horse of some peeler, working with one of Shanghai Pierce's herds, acted up one morning and fell backwards with him so that his gun accidentally discharged. The outfit lay over a day and gave him as decent a burial as they could. We would find the new-made grave ahead on Squaw Creek, beyond the crossing to the right-hand side in a clump of cottonwoods. The next day, while watering the herd at this creek, we all rode over and looked at the grave. The outfit had fixed things up quite nicely. They had built a square pen of rough cottonwood logs around the grave, and had marked the head and foot with a big flat stone, edged up, heaping up quite a mound of stones to keep the animals away. In a tree his name was cut. Sounded natural, too, though none of us knew him, as Pierce always drove from the East Coast country. There was nothing different about this grave from the hundreds of others which made landmarks on the old Western Trail, except that it was the latest. That night around the campfire, some of the boys were moved to tell their experiences. This accident might happen to any of us, and it seemed rather short notice to a man enjoying life, even though his calling was rough. "As for myself," said Rod Wheat, "I'm not going to fret. You can't avoid it when it comes, and every now and then you miss it by a hair. I had an uncle who served 4 years in the Confederate Army, went through 30 engagements, was wounded half a dozen times, and came home well and sound. Within a month after his return, a plow handle kicked him in the side, and we buried him within a week." "Oh, well," said Fox, commenting on the sudden call of the man whose grave we had seen, "it won't make much difference to this fellow back here when the horn toots and the graves give up their dead. He might just as well start from there as anywhere. I don't envy him none, though. But if I had any pity to offer now, it would be for a mother or sister who might wish that he slept nearer home." This last remark carried our minds far away from their present surroundings to other graves which were not on the trail. There was a long silence. We lay around the campfire and gazed into its depths, while its flickering light threw our shadows out beyond the circle. Our revelry was finally broken by Ash Borrowstone, who was by all odds the most impressionable and emotional one in the outfit, a man who always argued the moral side of every question, yet could not be credited with possessing an iota of moral stamina. Gloomy as we were, he added to our depression by relating a pathetic incident which occurred at a child's funeral, when Flood reproved him, saying, "Well, neither that one you mentioned nor this one of Pierce's man is any of our funeral. We're on the trail with Lovell's cattle. You should keep nearer the earth." There was a long silence after this reproof of the foreman. It was evident that there was a gloom settling over the outfit. Our thoughts were ranging wide. At last Rod Wheat spoke up and said that in order to get the benefit of all the variations, the blues were not a bad thing to have. But the depression of our spirits was not so easily dismissed. In order to avoid listening to the gloomy tales that were being narrated around the campfire, a number of us got up and went out as if to look up the night horses on picket. The Rebel and I pulled our picket pins and changed our horses to fresh grazing, and after lying down among the horses, out of hearing of the camp, for over an hour, returned to the wagon expecting to retire. A number of the boys were making down their beds, as it was already late, but on our arrival at the fire, one of the boys had just concluded a story as gloomy as the others which had preceded it. "These stories you were telling tonight," said Flood, "remind me of what Lige Link said to the book agent when he was shearing sheep." "I reckon," said Lige, "that book of yours has a heap sight more poetry in it than there is in shearing sheep. I wish I had gone on guard tonight, so I could have missed these stories." At this juncture the first guard rode in, having been relieved, and John Officer, who had exchanged places on guard that night with Moss Strayhorn, remarked that the cattle were uneasy. "This outfit," said he, "didn't half water the herd today. 1/3 of them hasn't bedded down yet, and they don't act as if they aim to, either. There's no excuse for it in a well-watered country like this. I'll leave the saddle on my horse, anyhow." "Now that's the result," said our foreman, "of the hour we spent around that grave today, when we ought to have been tending to our job. This outfit," he continued, when Officer returned from picketing his horse, "have been trying to hold funeral services over that Pierce man's grave back there. You'd think so anyway, from the tales they've been telling. I hope you won't get the sniffles and tell any." "This letting yourself get gloomy," said Officer, "reminds me of a time we once had at the J.H. camp in the Cherokee Strip. It was near Christmas, and the work was all done up. The boys had blowed in their summer wages and were feeling glum all over. One or two of the boys were lamenting that they hadn't gone home to see the old folks. This gloomy feeling kept spreading until they actually wouldn't speak to each other. One of them would go out and sit on the woodpile for hours, all by himself, and make a new set of good resolutions. Another would go out and sit on the ground on the sunny side of the corrals and dig holes in the frozen earth with his knife. They wouldn't come to meals when the cook called them. Now Miller, the foreman, didn't have any sympathy for them. In fact, he delighted to see them in that condition. He hadn't any use for a man who wasn't dead tough under any condition. I've known him to camp his outfit on alkali water, so the men would get out in the morning, and every rascal beg leave to ride on the outside circle on the morning roundup. Well, 3 days before Christmas, just when things were looking gloomiest, there drifted up from the Cheyenne country one of the old-timers. None of them had seen him in 4 years, though he had worked on that range before, and with the exception of myself, they all knew him. He was riding the chuck line all right, but Miller gave him a welcome, as he was the real thing. He had been working out in the Panhandle country, New Mexico, and the devil knows where, since he had left that range. He was meaty with news and scary stories. The boys would sit around and listen to him yarn, and now and then a smile would come on their faces. Miller was delighted with his guest. He had shown no signs of letting up at 11 o'clock the first night, when he happened to mention where he was the Christmas before. "There was a little woman at the ranch," said he, "wife of the owner, and I was helping her get up dinner, as we had quite a number of folks at the ranch. She asked me to make the bear sign, doughnuts she called them, and I did, though she had to show me how some little. Well, fellas, you ought to have seen them. Just sweet enough, brown to a turn, and enough to last a week. All the folks at dinner that day praised them. Since then, I've had a chance to try my hand several times, and you may not tumble to the diversity of all my accomplishments, but I am an artist on bear sign." Miller arose, took him by the hand, and said, "That's straight now, is it?" "That's straight. Making bear sign is my long suit." "Mouse," said Miller to one of the boys, "go out and bring in his saddle from the stable and put it under my bed. Throw his horse into the big pasture in the morning. He stays here until spring, and the first spear of green grass I see, his name goes on the payroll. This outfit